What's up, nerds, and welcome to the Nerd History Podcast, a proud part of the Love Thy Nerd Podcast Network and your home for celebrating the nostalgia that has shaped nerd culture. Today, I'm Radio Matt, the Director of Content and Resources for Love Thy Nerd, and joining me today is the Nature Boy, John Birkey. Woo! John is subbing in for Dave.
That's the old Ric Flair.
John is subbing in for Daedra over the course of 4 episodes as we take a deep look at the history of WrestleMania. Each day this week, we will have a new part of the WrestleMania story. We start on Monday with a look of WrestleManias 1 through 10. Yesterday was 11 through 20. Today, 21 through 30. And tomorrow, WrestleManias 31 through 40. Finally, on Friday, what are we doing, John?
We're talking about WrestleMania and getting ready for WrestleMania.
More of it.
And we're talking what?
More of the WrestleMania.
Oh, we're talking about more of this WrestleMania, specifically the one that's coming up. Which there's a lot to talk about because it just came out yesterday or a couple days ago that WrestleMania was going to be combined 18 hours of product.
Whew. Yeah, I can't wait to talk about that.
And Matt's coming over for every last segment.
As I said, today we're going to try and quickly cover each one of the third decade's worth of events with a little history, some fun facts, and some key moments. And then John and I are going to talk about them at the end. And since there's so much to get to, let's do it right now. For 4 decades, one event has defined professional wrestling on a global scale. The lights, the moments, the legends. It all happens at WrestleMania. This is a 4-part documentary series tracing the rise, the chaos, the reinvention, and the legacy of WWE's biggest night. From the birth of Hulkamania to the fall of the Bloodline, this is the nerd history of WrestleMania. This was the era of new faces, internet-fueled hype, and WrestleMania growing into a global juggernaut. Cena, Batista, Punk, Bryan. These weren't hand-picked stars, they were earned. Fans made their voices heard, and WWE, sometimes reluctantly, responded. It was also the era of the streak, of heartbreak, of spectacle, and of chants of yes across the stadium. These 10 years redefined what WrestleMania could be and who it was really for. WrestleMania 21, April 3rd, 2005, Staples Center in Los Angeles. The tagline was WrestleMania Goes Hollywood, and it wasn't just branding. The entire show felt cinematic, from the spoof trailers in the build-up to the way they used the spotlight to crown new stars. This was the moment WWE finally moved on from the last generation and made it clear who was taking over. 2 guys walked in with momentum. They walked out as the future, John Cena and Batista. Cena faced JBL for the WWE Championship. JBL had been on a dominant run, undefeated for nearly a year, cocky, smug, hated. Cena had been rising fast, building that Doctor of Thugonomics swagger, and this was the payoff. The match itself wasn't a classic, but the moment was. Cena hit the FU, pinned JBL clean, and held up his first world title as confetti rained down. That was it, the birth of the face of the company for the next decade. Then in the main event, Batista versus Triple H for the World Heavyweight Championship. This one had a slow burn story behind it. Batista had been part of Evolution, Triple H's muscle, but the split was coming for months. The build-up was about respect, manipulation, and power. In the ring, they told that story with every move. Batista destroyed Triple H to win the title. No interference, no cheap shots, just a clean powerbomb. Another torch passed. But the show wasn't just about two new champions. This was also the debut of the Money in the Bank ladder match, created just for this show. 6 guys: Edge, Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, Kane, Christian, and Shelton Benjamin. All hungry, all dangerous. It was chaos in the best way. Edge won the match, grabbing the briefcase, and that moment would end up launching his main event run within the year. And then there was Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle, a dream match that actually delivered. No title on the line, just pure competition. They went nearly 30 minutes, traded every hold and counter they had, and Kurt finally made HBK tap to the ankle lock. Wrestling fans ate it up. Still one of the best matches in WrestleMania history. Undertaker versus Randy Orton was another standout. Orton was in his full legend killer mode, trying to be the guy who ended the streak. He came close, even hit an RKO out of nowhere, but Taker rose up, hit the tombstone, and moved to 13-0. It was one of the first times the streak really felt like a story in itself. WrestleMania 21 wasn't just a great show, it was a declaration. WWE was done leaning on nostalgia. It was time for something new. Cena and Batista, Edge with a briefcase, Shawn and Angle tearing the house down. The whole card felt like the company turning the page and for once, doing it right. WrestleMania 22, April 2nd, 2006, Chicago's Allstate Arena. It was the last WrestleMania held in a smaller, traditional arena, not a stadium. And because of that, the crowd was insane. Packed, loud, and hot all night. It gave the show a rawer, more intense vibe, and that helped sell some of the chaos WWE had lined up. This show was violent, emotional, and surprisingly personal, and it had range, from blood-soaked grudge matches to over-the-top spectacle. Let's start with the main event, John Cena versus Triple H for the World Wrestling Entertainment Championship. This was the night Chicago made it very clear they were not behind Cena. They booed him out of the building. Triple H, technically the heel, got cheered like a hero, but that worked in the match's favor. It added tension. Cena locked in the STFU, made Hunter tap out clean, and stood tall in enemy territory. He was the guy, whether fans liked it or not. Earlier, Batista was out, recovering from injury, so the World Heavyweight Championship was on Kurt Angle, and he defended it in a triple threat against Rey Mysterio and Randy Orton. Rey's win wasn't just a title change, it was a tribute. Eddie Guerrero had passed just months earlier, and this was WWE giving Rey the moment. The match was short but emotional. Rey won, broke down crying, and celebrated with Eddie's family in the crowd. It was real. But the match people still talk about, Mick Foley versus Edge in a hardcore match. Foley wanted his WrestleMania moment, and holy heckfire, did he get it. They brought out barbed wire bats, thumbtacks, chairs, flaming tables. Yes, Edge speared Foley through a flaming table. Edge won, but Foley walked away with his moment. That match was brutal, creative, and showed that Edge could hang in any environment. Shawn Michaels versus Mr. McMahon was pure Attitude Era chaos. No rules, lots of weapons, and HBK treating Vince like a crash test dummy. He hit an elbow drop off the ladder onto Vince through a trash can and a table. It was long, wild, and more satisfying than it had any right to be. This was also the year of the Mickie James versus Trish Stratus women's title match, and it was way ahead of its time. Real story, real heat, and the crowd was fully into it. Mickie won, and despite one notorious gesture that got cut in future replays, the match showed that the women could go. Money in the Bank was back for year 2, and Rob Van Dam took the briefcase. He'd go on to cash it in later that summer at ECW One Night Stand in one of the best cash-ins ever. WrestleMania 22 had blood, fire, weapons, emotion. It wasn't the cleanest show, but it hit. Cena cemented his spot under heavy fire. Rey had his tribute, and Foley finally got his Mania moment. It didn't need a stadium to feel massive. WrestleMania 23 wasn't just a wrestling show. It was a full-on media event. It was held on April 1st, 2007 at Ford Field in Detroit. The big hook? The Battle of the Billionaires. Vince McMahon versus Donald Trump. Each backing a wrestler in a hair versus hair match. If your guy lost, you got your head shaved. Trump backed Bobby Lashley. Vince had Umaga. Stone Cold Steve Austin was the special guest referee. It was bizarre, overbooked, and completely entertaining. The match itself was chaotic, stunners, interference, ref bumps, even Shane McMahon getting involved. But the moment everyone remembers? Trump clotheslining Vince, and then, after Lashley won, Austin and Trump shaved Vince bald in front of 80,000 people. It was surreal, and it worked. The match helped drive the highest buy rate in WrestleMania history up to that point. But let's not skip the actual main event. John Cena versus Shawn Michaels for the WWE Championship. Batista versus Undertaker got the World Heavyweight title spotlight, but Cena and Michaels closed the show, and they delivered. The crowd was split again, but Cena and Shawn put on a clinic. Hard-hitting, dramatic, and full of big match energy. Cena tapped out HBK to retain the title, and the crowd gave it up for both of them. Earlier in the night, Batista versus The Undertaker was an absolute war, and way better than most people expected going in. Taker won, keeping the streak alive at 15-0, and walked out with the World Heavyweight title. One of his best Mania matches at that point, and it kicked off a string of classics for him in the years that followed. Money in the Bank was back too, and Mr. Kennedy won it this time. He was supposed to be the next breakout guy, but injuries and bad timing derailed that pretty fast. He never cashed in successfully. Also, the Great Khali squashed Kane. Yep, that happened. Melina versus Ashley for the Women's Championship was rough. Not because of effort, but because the division was still stuck in the Divas era. It would be years before the women's matches got the respect they deserved again. But make no mistake, the show was massive. Cena on top again, Taker adding another win to the streak, and Vince getting his head shaved by a future president, and Stone Cold Steve Austin together. Only in wrestling. WrestleMania 23 was loud, wild, and over the top in the best possible way. The perfect storm of wrestling and media spectacle, and it proved WWE was ready to go even bigger. WrestleMania 24, March 30th, 2008, Citrus Bowl in Orlando. Open air stadium, packed crowd, gorgeous sunset. This one had all the big fight energy and one of the most emotional send-offs in wrestling history. WrestleMania 24 felt like a show built around moments, and it delivered some of the most memorable in Mania history. Let's start here. Ric Flair versus Shawn Michaels. Flair's career on the line. Flair had been told that the next match he lost would be his last, so here he was, in the ring with Mr. WrestleMania, knowing the clock was ticking. The match wasn't about flash, it was about emotion. And the finish? Devastating. HBK hesitated, looked across the ring and mouthed, "I'm sorry. I love you." Then nailed sweet chin music. Flair went down, Michaels pinned him, then left the ring so Flair could have his moment. Flair stood up, crying, soaking in the ovation. The entire arena was on its feet. Family at ringside, fans in tears. It was perfect. But that wasn't the main event. Edge versus The Undertaker closed the show for the World Heavyweight Championship. And by this point, the streak mattered. Taker came in 15-0. Edge was undefeated at WrestleMania 2. The match was smooth, intense, and full of near falls. They teased everything, ref bumps, finish reversals, even a camera shot from Edge, but in the end, Taker locked in Hell's Gate. Edge tapped, and the streak rolled on, 16-0, and a new world champion. Then there was Floyd Mayweather versus Big Show. A total spectacle. WWE brought in the biggest boxer on the planet and let Big Show play the villain. The match was actually booked smart. Mayweather used speed, weapons, and backup to stay alive. And when the brass knuckles came out, he knocked Big Show out cold. The crowd went nuts. It was way better than it had any right to be. John Cena versus Triple H versus Randy Orton was the WWE Championship match, a triple threat that somehow got less attention than the celebrity match, but it was solid. Orton won, retaining in shock fashion after punting Triple H. The crowd didn't see that one coming. Also worth noting, CM Punk won Money in the Bank, which was huge at the time. He wasn't seen as a main event guy yet, but this was the start of that rise. Batista beat Umaga in a brand versus brand match that didn't do much beyond filling time. Same with JBL versus Finlay. It was a Belfast brawl and it was stiff, but not essential. But WrestleMania 24 will always be about that Flair Michaels moment. They told a complete story. The aging legend, the reluctant executioner, and the perfect goodbye. This show had everything. Emotion, violence, showmanship, title changes, celebrity moments that worked, and a crowd that was locked in all night. WrestleMania 25, April 5th, 2009, Reliance Stadium in Houston, Texas. WWE called it the 25th anniversary of WrestleMania, which was technically off by a year because that's how anniversaries work. But hey, branding. WrestleMania 25 had some hype behind it. Big venue, strong card on paper, and a milestone number. But when people talk about this show now, they talk about one thing. The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, one of the greatest matches ever, not just in WrestleMania history, but in pro wrestling history, period. HBK came down from the heavens in white, Taker rose from the shadows in black. It was light versus dark, soul versus streak. The crowd knew it was special before the bell rang. And what followed was 30 minutes of pure wrestling art. Reversals, near falls, intensity, and a dive spot where Taker almost broke his neck outside the ring. They recovered, turned the pace up even more, and when Taker finally hit the second tombstone, the building exploded. 17-0. The fans were exhausted from cheering. That match saved the show, because honestly, the rest was spotty. The main event, Triple H versus Randy Orton for the WWE Championship, was one of the coldest feeling Mania main events in years. The build was white hot, home invasions, mind games, personal attacks, but the match, slow. No weapons allowed, despite the personal story. The crowd never got into it. Triple H won clean, but it fell flat. Then there was John Cena versus Edge versus Big Show for the World Heavyweight title. A love triangle storyline involving Vicky Guerrero, of all things. Cena hit one of the wildest spots of the night, lifting both guys at once for an attitude adjustment. The match was fun, but not main event level. Matt Hardy versus Jeff Hardy was a brutal brother versus brother match with ladders, chairs, and a swanton bomb through two tables and a ladder outside the ring. Matt won clean with a twist of fate using a steel chair. It was wild, emotional, and one of the stronger undercard matches. Chris Jericho wrestled a weird handicap match against three legends, Ricky Steamboat, Jimmy Snuka, and Roddy Piper. Steamboat stole the show in that one, moving like it was 1989. Then, post-match, Jericho knocked out Mickey Rourke, who was at ringside fresh off the movie The Wrestler. It was awkward, but it got buzz. CM Punk won Money in the Bank again, back-to-back. Another solid ladder match, with Kofi Kingston and Shelton Benjamin pulling off some wild stunts, but Punk's win set him up for a summer turn that would define his career. WrestleMania 25 didn't hit all the right notes, but Taker vs. Michaels was so good, so timeless, that it made everything else feel secondary. It wasn't just a match, it was a masterpiece. WrestleMania 26, March 28th, 2010, Glendale, Arizona. Indoor stadium, packed house, and everything built to one simple massive hook. It lived and died on its main event. Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels 2. The rematch from WrestleMania 25. Last year was about pride. This year, everything was on the line. If Shawn lost, he was done. No more Mr. WrestleMania, no more comebacks, no more HBK. And in the weeks leading up, he got desperate, obsessed. This wasn't about ego anymore, it was about legacy. When they hit the ring, you could feel the pressure. Fans were quiet during the entrances, like they knew they were watching something final. And once again, they delivered. It wasn't quite the lightning in a bottle magic of their first match, but it had more weight. Every move felt like it could end a career. Michaels kicked out of a tombstone. Taker told him to stay down. Shawn slapped him. Taker responded with one last emphatic jumping tombstone, then made the cover. 1, 2, 3. Shawn Michaels was done. Taker knelt. Shawn stood. They shook hands, Taker walked off, and for the first time, WrestleMania ended with a loss and a farewell. Elsewhere on the card, you had John Cena versus Batista for the WWE Championship. It was their first and only Mania match, and it delivered big time. This was a heavyweight fight. No love lost, just power moves and attitude. Cena won via STF, making Batista tap out clean. A strong co-main, and Cena was firmly the top guy by this point. Chris Jericho versus Edge for the World Heavyweight Championship was technically sound, but the crowd didn't fully buy into it until late. Jericho retained with a code breaker, then Edge speared him through the barricade to close the segment on a high note. Bret Hart versus Vince McMahon happened too. A street fight 13 years in the making. On paper, it had hype. In practice, it was long, slow, and awkward. Vince brought out the entire Hart family to try and outwit Bret, but it backfired. Bret beat the mess out of him with a chair, then made him tap to the sharpshooter. The crowd loved seeing Vince finally get what was coming to him, even if the match dragged. CM Punk versus Rey Mysterio was short but sharp. Classic good versus evil. If Rey lost, he had to join the straight edge society. He didn't. And Punk's reaction? Perfect heel frustration. Money in the Bank featured 10 guys this time, and Jack Swagger won it in what was probably the least hype cash-in winner to date. But he'd cash in days later on SmackDown, so it meant something, even if it didn't blow people away. WrestleMania XXVI was clean, well-paced, and emotional. The streak stayed alive. A legend said goodbye, and for once, WWE treated retirement like it actually mattered. No gimmicks, no swerves, just a perfect ending to one of the greatest careers ever. WrestleMania XXVII had hype. It had nostalgia. It had mainstream attention thanks to The Rock's return. But when it was over, fans were split, because most of the show felt like it was setting up something else rather than delivering in the moment. April 3rd, 2011, Atlanta, Georgia. One of the most uneven WrestleManias ever. The main event, John Cena versus The Miz for the WWE Championship. Miz was champion, but the spotlight wasn't really on him. It was on The Rock, who opened the show, popped up throughout the night, and made it clear he wasn't done with Cena. The match itself was forgettable, clunky, slow, and then it ended in a double countout. But Rock restarted it, hit Cena with a rock bottom, and Miz got the win. The crowd popped, but everyone knew what this was, a setup for next year. Meanwhile, the real main event, at least in terms of quality, was The Undertaker versus Triple H. This match didn't have the same stakes as the Shawn matches did, but it might as well have. They beat the heck out of each other. Chairs, announce tables, finishers, tombstones, brutal stuff. And it ended with Taker barely locking in Hell's Gate and forcing Triple H to tap. Taker went 19-0, but couldn't even walk out under his own power. That told the story. He won, but it nearly killed him. Easily match of the night. Randy Orton versus CM Punk was solid, built on mind games and sneak attacks, and the crowd was into it. Orton won with a mid-air RKO that looked amazing. The undercard, though, rough. Edge versus Alberto Del Rio opened the show for the World Heavyweight Championship. The match was decent, but the moment was bigger. This would be Edge's last match for nearly a decade. He retired due to neck issues just days later. Nobody knew it at the time, but this was a quiet goodbye from one of WWE's biggest stars. Jerry the King Lawler versus Michael Cole happened, and it dragged. It was built up for months, and fans wanted to see Cole get wrecked. But the match was long, awkward, and it ended in a reverse decision that made no one happy. Even Austin as the guest ref couldn't save it. Snooki wrestled. In the women's division, still being treated as filler. Trish Stratus, John Morrison, and Snooki beat Lay Cool and Dolph Ziggler in a forgettable 6-person tag. Sad waste of talent and time. WrestleMania XXVII felt like a holding pattern. It was all about getting to Cena versus Rock next year. And while Taker versus Triple H was elite and Orton versus Punk was strong, the rest didn't land. But the seeds were planted. Rock versus Cena, Miz's peak, and Edge's shock goodbye. Even if it wasn't great in the moment, it shaped what came next. WrestleMania XXVIII, April 1st, 2012, Miami Gardens, Florida, Sun Life Stadium. This one had massive hype. A full year of build. Once in a lifetime, Rock versus Cena. It was all over mainstream media, and this time WWE delivered big. 2 eras colliding. The Attitude Era's final icon and the face of the PG era, WWE. They announced the match a year in advance, and somehow the hype never cooled down. Miami was buzzing. The crowd was split, loud everywhere. And when the bell rang, they delivered. It wasn't a technical clinic. It didn't need to be. It was a big fight feel match built around counters, taunts, and pacing. Every move meant something. And then, in the closing moments after a cocky Cena went for the people's elbow, Rock popped up, hit the rock bottom, and pinned Cena clean. The stadium erupted. Rock won. Cena sat crushed in the corner, and once in a lifetime ended with a surprise. Elsewhere, Undertaker versus Triple H 2, this time inside Hell in a Cell, with Shawn Michaels as special referee. Was every bit as dramatic as you'd expect. It was billed as the end of an era, and it felt like it. Chairs, sledgehammers, finishers, HBK freaking out, near falls that had people standing up. When Taker finally won, 20-0, the 3 of them stood on the ramp together, arms around each other, soaking it in. No promo could have matched that visual. CM Punk versus Chris Jericho for the WWE Championship was the technical masterpiece of the night. Jericho tried to get in Punk's head before the match, mocking his family, his straight-edge lifestyle, but Punk stayed locked in. It was a smart, crisp match with chain wrestling and stiff shots, and Punk retained via Anaconda Vice in the middle of the ring. Daniel Bryan versus Sheamus opened the show and ended in 18 seconds. Bryan turned to kiss AJ Lee at the bell, Sheamus hit a brogue kick, and it was over. The crowd hated it. But that backlash, though, it launched the Yes movement. So in a weird way, it worked. The rest of the card had some filler. Big Show finally won a Mania match, beating Cody Rhodes for the Intercontinental title. Team Johnny versus Team Teddy determined control of Raw and SmackDown. Nobody remembers who won it. It was Team Johnny, but it filled time. Kelly Kelly and Maria Menounos beat Eve and Beth Phoenix in a celebrity tag match that didn't do much, but the crowd was respectful. WrestleMania XXVIII felt huge. Taker, Triple H, and HBK had a WrestleMania curtain call. Rock beat Cena in his hometown. Punk and Jericho gave the purists their match, and Bryan's 18-second loss, weirdly iconic. This was WWE operating at full awareness of what Mania should be. Spectacle, story, and one match that feels like the center of the universe. WrestleMania XXIX, April 7th, 2013, MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. Over 80,000 in the crowd. Cold weather, big setup. The card was headlined by the rematch nobody really asked for. The Rock versus John Cena 2 for the WWE Championship. The year before, it was once in a lifetime. Now, twice in 2 years. This time, the story was redemption. Cena had lost to Rock in Miami, and it sent him into a spiral. Now he was back to prove he could win when it mattered most. The match itself, safe, slow, clean. 2 pros doing their thing, but without the magic of the first time. Lots of finishers, a couple false finishes, and then Cena countered a rock bottom into an attitude adjustment for the win. The crowd popped. Kind of. Cena offered a handshake, Rock accepted, they posed on the ramp together. Mutual respect, no drama, no heel turn, just done. It wasn't bad. It just felt like a repeat. Now let's talk about the real main event. The Undertaker versus CM Punk. This was Punk at peak heel. Paul Heyman by his side, disrespecting Paul Bearer's death, taunting Taker week after week. The story was personal, and the match an absolute banger. Punk brought the mind games, the pacing, the athleticism, and Taker met him move for move. Kicks, counters, table spots, old school into GTS, into tombstone teases. It was wild. In the end, Taker nailed the tombstone and moved to 21-0, but Punk looked like a made man. Match of the night, easily. Elsewhere, Triple H versus Brock Lesnar in a no-holds-barred match with Triple H's career on the line. It was brutal. Steel steps, chair shots, spine busters on tables, but also kind of slow. It had big moments, but didn't fully click. Triple H won, obviously, because he was not retiring yet. Alberto Del Rio versus Jack Swagger for the World Heavyweight title opened the card, and was totally forgettable. Swagger had some real-world legal trouble going on, and the crowd just wasn't invested. Del Rio won with the cross arm breaker. The Shield made their Mania debut facing Big Show, Sheamus, and Randy Orton in a six-man tag. They looked like killers. Clean teamwork, fast pacing, and a win after Ambrose pinned Orton. It was the start of something big. Fandango made his Fandango made his in-ring debut and beat Chris Jericho. Crowd was hot for it. The match was decent, and somehow it led to a theme song going viral the next night. Strangely entertaining. Kane and Daniel Bryan defended the tag titles against Dolph Ziggler and Big E. Fun match, but the crowd was ready for Bryan to break out. WrestleMania 29 was a tale of two halves. The top build match underdelivered, but the rest was solid to excellent. Punk vs. Taker was must-watch. The Shield made an impact, and Cena Rock 2, well, it closed the show, but it didn't steal it. WrestleMania 30, April 6, 2014, New Orleans Superdome. This wasn't just a great show, it was one of the most emotionally satisfying nights WWE had ever put together. Two huge shockers, one massive underdog story, and a crowd that was fully living every second of it. WrestleMania 30 wasn't supposed to be about Daniel Bryan. The original plan was all about Batista's return, the Authority, and big names like Orton and Lesnar. But the fans said, nah, dog, and WWE had to pivot. What we got instead? A story about earned glory, and a payoff that hit perfectly. Bryan opened the night facing Triple H in a must-win match. If he beat Hunter, he'd be added to the main event for the WWE World Heavyweight title. And they didn't just make Bryan squeak by, they let him steal the show. It was a near-perfect match, technical, fast, emotional. Bryan won clean with the knee, and the crowd erupted. But that was just part one. Part two, Daniel Bryan versus Randy Orton versus Batista in the main event. Bryan came in taped up, selling the arm. They beat him thoroughly. There was a brutal Batista bomb RKO combo through the announce table. It looked like he was done, but he kept coming. Crowd fully behind him. Then, running knee to Batista. 1, 2, 3. Yes chants everywhere. Confetti. Bryan on his knees, belts in hand, crying. One of the most satisfying Mania endings ever. But that wasn't even the biggest shock of the night. Earlier, The Undertaker faced Brock Lesnar. And let's be real, nobody thought Taker was losing. 21-0, the streak had become sacred. But then, F5. 1, 2, 3. And the crowd went silent. The graphic hit, 21-1. Lesnar's music played and people in the Superdome just sat there, stunned, faces blank. The most protected record in wrestling was gone, and WWE let that moment breathe. No music, no commentary, just pure disbelief, like a funeral. Whether you loved it or hated it, you felt it. Elsewhere on the card, The Shield steamrolled Kane and the New Age Outlaws in a total squash. Reigns, Rollins, and Ambrose were red hot, and this was a momentum builder. John Cena versus Bray Wyatt was a big spotlight for Bray, and the crowd was fully behind him. But WWE still had Cena win clean, which felt off. Great storytelling, but wrong winner for a lot of fans. Cesaro won the inaugural Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, and the finish was awesome. He body slammed Big Show over the top rope, echoing Hogan-Andre vibes. Huge pop. Felt like a star-making moment, even if WWE didn't follow through with Cesaro later on. Also, Hogan, Austin, and The Rock opened the show together. A total nostalgia hit. 3 eras, 1 ring, and Hogan hilariously calling the Superdome the Silverdome several times. Austin roasted him. Rock dropped catchphrases, and the crowd loved every second. WrestleMania 30 was magic. Bryan finally crowned. The streak ended. Real surprises, real emotion. It wasn't just a good WrestleMania. It was a perfect storm of storytelling, crowd energy, and stakes actually mattering. WrestleMania 30 closed with one champion hoisting 2 titles and another legend streak broken forever. It was equal parts celebration and shock. The fans had reshaped the story. WWE had opened new doors, and Mania had never felt more like our event. But just over the horizon, a new era with new platforms, new politics, and a few shocking returns. It is discussion time for WrestleMania's 21. Gosh, there's so many. Through 30. WrestleMania 21 was the launching point for both John Cena and Batista, both winning titles on the same night. Which of them... This is like almost a double torch passing kind of night. Yeah. But it might inform the answer to the question. Which one of these do you think got the better end of the deal moving forward?
So, I mean, I think that in terms of wrestling, John Cena got the best end of this deal. I think that this is really sort of the Mania that started the Universal era. To me, like, I don't think of anything before that as being... I mean, WrestleMania 20 was a little bit of...
It was like a transition.
It was a transition between like the Attitude and...
We did have the old kind of Madison Square Garden atmosphere. They were playing a lot into the nostalgia being the 20th anniversary, but also kind of looking towards the future. But yeah, I agree. This one was a big deal.
Here's the weird thing is you use the word torch passing. And to me, like, was JBL ever a torch bearer? And that's not to crap on JBL, but like, until you sent me that text, I forgot he had been champion.
He was champion for a good while.
Yeah.
He was a top heel for a good while. Came out in that limousine with the long horns on the front.
Yeah, no, it was great. It's a great match. It's a great set. I mean, it's everything. And Batista won it from Triple H, right?
I believe so. No,
that doesn't make any sense.
That's not right. Let me look it up.
Never won it from like...
Yeah, Triple H was much later. This was... Where are you? It was Triple H.
Okay.
What do you know? Yeah, I'm getting it confused with the... Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm not confused. I was just having the time way off. This was the round out of the Evolution storyline. I don't know why I was thinking Evolution was much later.
I thought Evolution was much later.
Wow. Yeah. No, okay. So, yeah, this was the
end of Evolution.
The end of Evolution.
So I don't know that JBL was ever really the torchbearer. Even though I think he was one of the big workhorses in WWE.
Sure.
I'm not sure that torchbearer is the word that I'd use. And it'd be kind of odd to suggest that Triple H passed the torch and then wrestled for another 6 years at the top of his game.
He was a pretty top tier character at the time.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess,
but what I will say is
more like a coronation
as a launching point for those two. And I think that we got so much good out of both of them. But, you know, Batista didn't even wrestle as long as Triple H did after that moment. So,
but Batista did go on to have a much better Hollywood career.
Oh, he has a much better Hollywood career.
Everything John Cena's in, I'm sad that I'm watching, except for Peacemaker. Though I was kind of sad I was watching it just because it was so vulgar. But it was at least good. Vulgar.
Good in season 2, though.
But everything else was like, what are you doing, John? What's going on?
Although you are a big Fast and Furious fan.
I haven't seen any of the ones with John.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, no.
But I think that definitely was like a pushing off point for John Cena, definitely.
Let's push on to WrestleMania 22. This was Edge versus Foley in the big hardcore match.
Yeah, big match.
Rey Mysterio had his emotional world title win that was dedicated to Eddie Guerrero.
From Big Show?
That sounds right.
Okay.
I don't remember now. You can't go ask me all the facts. There's too many of them for me to remember.
Doesn't matter.
Neither of these, though, were the main event. Has WWE historically struggled to recognize which stories fans are most invested in?
1,000%. 1,000%. And they do this weird thing the last few years of calling something a main event when it's not the main event, because the main event, the qualifier is it has to be the last thing of the show. I remember one time it was a Backlash, and they were like, "We have three main events." And do you know what place one of those main events was? The first match of the night. It was John Cena, Dean Ambrose, and AJ Styles for the WWE Championship, and it was the first match of the night. And they're like, "This is our first of 3 main events." Come on, guys.
I mean, just
come on, don't do that.
Admit it.
But I do think that, and I think like the pinnacle of that is 29, when CM Punk wrestled Undertaker, and it was like, well, this is kind of the main event, and then like whatever the one after.
29 was Rock versus Cena 2.
It was Rock versus Cena 2.
Yeah.
And they kept trying to tell CM Punk, they're like, well, this is kind of the main event. And he's like, no, it's not. It's the match before the main event. And you know that, and I know that. But it's the one people actually want to see. And I think that even taking that a step further, who was like, do you know what the people really want this year? What the people want more than anything? Jey Uso versus Gunther. We are going to not only put that in WrestleMania, but we're going to waste a Royal Rumble on this. And I'm the last week, I'm like, oh, this is getting better. But it's so uncalled for that they were like, okay, it's no longer the main event.
Yeah, you can see why
it's no longer one of our 9 main events.
Yeah. Well, speaking of this, though, and this can kind of go into our third question, is WrestleMania 25 had Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels #1.
Yeah.
Which has been lauded as one of the greatest wrestling matches ever. Not just WrestleMania, but of all time.
Yeah.
And I remember watching their story and them talking about how they were going on, I think it was 3rd originally.
Yeah.
And they had to fight to get on for like next to last or close to next to last. I don't quite remember, toward the end. And they decided that because they weren't being put in the main event, which this was a main event caliber matchup, they were going to tear the house down.
Oh, yeah.
And they did. And then nobody wanted to watch the main event, which was Triple H versus Orton, at all. The crowd was dead, tired, exhausted, ready to go home.
Yeah.
They're like, we had our WrestleMania. Now it's over. Let us go.
Yeah.
I mean, I was gonna ask, does it actually does that hurt the legacy of that match not being in the main event? But I think I'm gonna answer that it almost enhances it.
It hurts the legacy of the main event.
Right.
More than it hurts the legacy of those matches. Nobody cares if it's a main event. I mean, nobody actually cares that it's the main event. But if you want to laud something as the main event, then it's got to be something people care about. And it's just...
And there have been many, many main events that weren't for a title.
Yeah.
That were showstoppers.
But I'm trying to think. I mean, Charlotte Flair versus Ronda Rousey is not a main event. It's not a main event.
Yeah.
Sorry.
When it comes to the Taker HBK match, could there have been anything that actually followed that match? Like, could any matchup ever follow that match?
Yeah, I mean, like Armageddon could have started.
the pay-per-view?
No, Revelation 1911 could have started right there with Christ coming in with a sword to strike down thine enemies.
Okay. Not the 1999 special pre-Y2K December pay-per-view Armageddon.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't think... I don't know. I'd have to go back and just even look at that.
It's worth it. Such a good match.
It was a good pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm. It was the 25th anniversary.
Yeah.
So they went all out for it.
28 years after the first one.
It's 24 years after the first one.
Wasn't 25 McMahon versus Trump? Or was that?
No, that came.
It was 23.
It might have been 22 or 23. Yeah, I can't remember now.
Anyway, no, I don't think there's anything that could have followed. And there's no, I mean, I'm not sure that there was a way of knowing. Like, nobody could have known that match was going to go nearly the way that it went. Nearly as good as it went.
Right.
They didn't think it was going to go as good.
Yeah, even they didn't think it was going to be that good. Yeah.
Everything about that match, it's the Homelander meme, was perfect down to the last minute detail. Like, everything was perfect in that match. Mm-hmm. Even the mistakes were perfect.
They looked intentional. Yeah. WrestleMania moved on in 28. Yeah, WrestleMania 28 was the once in a lifetime. I'm having trouble reading by Roman numerals. I'm sorry. Once in a lifetime Rock versus Cena match.
Once in a lifetime one, right?
Once in a lifetime number one, which kind of ruined the WrestleMania before, because the WrestleMania 4 before had The Rock ruining Cena's match.
Yeah.
And then the next night challenging him to next year's WrestleMania.
Yeah. Which I've gone on record saying is one of the best ways to book a WrestleMania matches ever.
In advance.
A year in advance. Yeah.
But it did kind of quell the WrestleMania before. It
cheapened Miz's win.
Right. But anyway, Rock versus Cena was pretty good. It was pretty good match. It was definitely the main event. But did it cheapen it to come back and do it again the next year?
Honestly, I don't think it did.
Yeah.
I think we were mad at the time, but then we watched it again and we're like, okay, I mean, this is... Now, the way I think they did it was not good, because they forced themselves into it. They said, okay, we're going to... Like... You had the Royal Rumble before that, and at the beginning of that Royal Rumble, this match had no reason or possibility of happening. Mm-hmm. And then The Rock went and beat CM Punk. That was the very famous, you don't end the match, I end the match. Ring the bell, and like, he won. He took the belt off of CM Punk. Mm-hmm. And we're like, okay, I guess we get The Rock going in as champion against whoever wins the Royal Rumble. And then Cena won the Royal Rumble. And it was just like, you didn't have to do this. You didn't have to end the most historic, at the time, the most historic WWE championship run of all time and take a spot off the Royal Rumble. You could have done it without doing all of that stuff and made it matter. And it mattered. I think it was a fantastic... I think we didn't like it when it was starting to happen. I think by the end of it, we're like, oh no, this is okay. We can deal with this. This is good. So that was 29.
WrestleMania 28.
28. Yeah. 28 was Rock Cena 1.
Yeah.
The problem with Rock Cena 1 is it had to follow Undertaker versus Triple H, which might be one of those.
It did, yeah. Both of those.
It's one of those top 5 WrestleMania matches.
Those 4 years, the 2 HBK and 2 Triple H's, told basically one story.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful the whole way through.
Now, I think it also didn't cheapen it in the sense that, like, Rock Cena 2, what cheapened that pay-per-view was Brodus Clay coming out with all of the mamas.
Somebody call him a mama.
Everybody call your mama right now. Like, and everybody...
I could not believe that had been used at least 2 other times by previous wrestlers. That song, did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
That song was used by Xavier Woods for like a month when he first came into the main roster.
Yeah.
And it was used by somebody else for a long time, several years prior. Gosh. That was not a Brodus Clay, but it took off with Brodus Clay, though.
Somebody call my mama. Somebody call my mama.
All right, WrestleMania 30. Last question here.
Okay.
WrestleMania 30 gave fans exactly what they wanted. Daniel Bryan on top.
Yep.
But we also got the streak ending.
Yeah.
We had a very stacked card. They played the 30th WrestleMania card as a big deal. Do you think that they specifically wanted to push the streak ending that WrestleMania to soften the blow of it just a bit because they knew the rest of the card was going to be the feel-good, happy moments?
Maybe.
Because it didn't have to happen there.
It didn't, but it's one of those, you knew it had to happen.
Mm-hmm. You're right. I guess you wouldn't want to wait until it was obvious he's got to be done this year.
The obvious was Cena.
Right.
Yeah, the obvious was we were all like, oh, John Cena's gonna end the streak. Like, why wouldn't he? That's what's happening. So when Brock Lesnar won, it was like, what are you that's a joke, right? I don't know. Maybe it did, but I also, like, you talk about feel good, like maybe, but that was Cena Wyatt, and that did not have a very like happy end. That was a
the face won. John Cena still won.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it did. I don't think it needed to.
No.
But I think that if there was a good time to end the streak, I think that was probably it. At the because they would have burned that place to the ground had Cena taken the streak. They would have burned it to the ground.
Yeah, I agree.
Nobody wanted that.
All right. Well, with that, part 3 of the nerd history of WrestleMania comes to a close. Join us again tomorrow as we tackle the last 10 years of WrestleMania. Subscribe to the Nerd History Podcast via our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@nerdhistoryltn, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any place that you find your podcasts. Find us on lovethynerd.com/nerdhistorypod. And we'll be back tomorrow to kick off with WrestleMania 31. But until then, I'm Radio Matt.
And I'm John.
Remember, in the past, the present, and the future, Jesus loves you, nerds.